Hello and welcome to our panel. My name is Maludi Gracia, NXUnite team member at Nexus Marketing and your moderator for today's panel. Today's panel topic is nonprofit digital strategies, reaching and engaging audiences. As usual, before I introduce today's panelists and we jump into this fascinating topic, I do have some quick logistics to cover. NXUnite is made in partnership with Nexus Marketing and serves as a powerful community resource designed to foster connections and facilitate lasting relationships within the mission driven sector. On NXUnite, you can find upcoming industry events, suggested influencers to follow, trusted solutions, and cost driven podcasts. NXUnite also provides webinars, demos, and of course, panels with experts such as these lovely folks with me here today. Today's sponsor is Getting Attention. They help nonprofits expand their impact and reach more people through Google Ads. Your nonprofit may be eligible for the Google Ad Grant, and Getting Attention can help you at any stage of the Google Ad Grant process, from application to reactivating lapsed grants. From selecting keywords to managing ad campaigns to optimizing landing pages, the team at Getting Attention will take the work of online advertising off your nonprofit's team's plate so you can focus on your mission. Thanks to Getting Attention for supporting the NXUnite mission as well. All right, today's hour-long panel will include time both for questions curated by my team and questions from you all, our fantastic audience. At any time during the panel, please feel free to submit your questions via the questions tab. We will spend the second half of the panel addressing as many as we possibly can. And if you're having any technical difficulties or have any logistics questions, my team member Anton is in the chat under the Team NXUnite username, ready to assist you the best he can. I also wanted to share that this panel is being recorded. So for those of you watching live, the recording will be sent to your email after the session ends. People can also continue to register and access the recording after the panel. So if you have any friends in the industry you want to share the insights from this panel with, simply send them that same registration page and they will be able to access it. Finally, before I introduce today's panelists, I want to thank you all for attending this panel. We're very excited to be in touch with you, the mission-driven community. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today to learn from these outstanding experts who I will now finally introduce. I'd like to first introduce Andrea Shireyus, the CEO and founder of 19 Design. She is a veteran in the marketing world with over 20 years of experience in higher education, fundraising, nonprofit leadership, and digital marketing. Her expertise encompasses creating inclusive and compelling websites for nonprofits and small businesses and developing sustainable marketing systems to move organizations forward. Great to have you, Andrea. Also with us today is...
Sorry, my mute button was not working there. Hi, nice to see everyone.
Also with us today is Carly Euler, who is the marketing manager at MemoryFox, where she values the opportunity to elevate hundreds of nonprofit missions. She has held positions at the Wiley Network, Breast Cancer Coalition, Code of Support Foundation, Kenya Lacrosse Association, and the BOMA Project, where she has specialized in marketing, special events, communications, and fundraising. Storytelling has been an integral part of each role. Glad to have you, Carly.
Hi, happy to be here.
Also with us today is Jessica King, who is the business lead at Getting Attention, where she helps nonprofits acquire and manage Google Ad Grant to expand their impact. Prior to her work at Getting Attention, Jessica worked in nonprofit and higher education organizations, focusing on communication and digital marketing, and most recently in search engine optimization in the mission driven sector. In her free time, you can find her reading, building furniture, and hanging out with her cats, Benny and Olive. Thanks for joining us, Jessica.
Thanks, Malu. I'm looking forward to the panel.
And finally, with us is Matthew Reynolds, who is the founder and video storyteller at Rustic Roots. For over 15 years, Matthew has been creating videos for organizations of all sizes. He founded Rustic Roots in 2015 to serve nonprofits and help them engage donors through video. He loves filming and spending time with his wife, Heather, his son, Jameson, and his twin girls, Magnolia and Carolina. Thanks for joining us, Matthew. Oh, you're muted.
Good to be here.
All right, now it's finally time to hear from our panelists. And Andrea, I'll have you start us off with the first question. In the digital age, what strategies have proven effective for nonprofit organizations to connect and engage with and engage their audiences?
All right, we're starting off with a bang, aren't we? I love this as the first question. I think it's very very appropriate here. And, I really think it can vary based on the nonprofit's target audience. Nonprofit, I've learned in this course of this work, it spans so many different size organizations, different targets, different missions, all of those kind of things. And obviously, depending on the amount of resources you have, both time and money, staffing, all of those things. So I think it's really, important for the organizations that are watching today to evaluate and adapt their strategies, based on changing circumstances. What works now may not work this time next year, or maybe what worked last year isn't going to work now. But with all of that said, I think some of the strategies that we continue to see over and over again working, and these folks are going to be experts on it, are going to be storytelling. I'm going to let them speak on that, but because I know that's what they're going to say. But I mean, that was definitely the first word that came to mind. Getting a little more, gritty there, though, I think email marketing is something that's totally underused by our nonprofits, at least those that I'm working with. Some of them may feel intimidated by not knowing which platforms to choose, feeling like they don't have the time to produce that content. But it's algorithm proof, right? You're landing right in somebody's inbox. You're building that connection one email at a time. It's not transactional. And so I think that's really one of the big digital strategies right now that nonprofits could easily adapt. No matter what budget size you're at, there's a product that probably will work for you. And obviously it's going to incorporate that storytelling right into there. So that's what I would lead with.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for starting us off, Andrea. Jessica, I'm going to bring the same question over to you. How can nonprofits effectively engage with their audiences in this digital age?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a broad question, but when it comes to digital communication strategies, I think kind of no matter what channel you pick, there are going to be kind of three main steps that you're going to want to go through. First is going to be audience analysis, and that goes to what Andrea was talking about finding out who you're talking to and what they're interested in hearing about from you, what their concerns are, etc. Then you're going to want to move into audience segmentation. So you're going to split your audience into groups based on shared characteristics, shared interests, kind of however it makes sense to do that. And then tailoring your messaging to appeal to these groups that you've created. So you're going to want to make sure you're tailoring your message in a way that's not trying to please every single person who may possibly be tuned in at once, but rather giving different groups what they need at the right time.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, Matthew, over to you. What strategies have proven effective to connect and engage with audiences?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be no surprise coming from me, but we are definitely big believers in using video to really hit that mission alignment and impact. Just being able to show the work, whether it's through video or photography, but then even using, we've really found email is also effective in a way of getting those stories to people. Just posting it on social or hoping that people see it on YouTube is not enough. Getting that more direct method through email, we've definitely seen a lot of benefit. But yeah, video for us, it really conveys that emotion, builds connection in a way that you get that visual of seeing people, you hear from people. It's a very human centered medium, so we really like it for the nonprofit world.
Wonderful. Thanks, Matthew. All right, Carly, anything you want to add to this conversation and how nonprofits can effectively connect and engage audiences?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all my fellow panelists hit on the two major things I wanted to talk about, which is storytelling and then email. So just quickly, when it comes to storytelling, we have a saying here at MemoryFox, video is not the future, it is the now. So we really just want everyone to start getting on board with using video more often, especially short form video. I do a lot of trying to get research and read a lot of reports. And according to Classy, fundraising campaigns that incorporate a video, they raise 114% more than campaigns that don't. And that isn't 10%, it's not 20%, it's 114 more percent. So it's really, why are we not using video? If you're not, it's time to get on board. And then in terms of email, just as Andrea was saying, like email, it's not going anywhere. People still love email. They love opening it. It's really going directly to your audience. They signed up to hear from you. So let's talk to them. And one interesting thing that I recently learned about email, which again goes back to Andrea and being able to change your strategy. I think just even a few years ago, we were sort of like, oh, don't put too many links in an email. People won't click on them. People will find it like spam. But I was just reading this report from Neon One, and they were saying that actually now that people are reading emails more on their phones and they have to scroll a lot further to get through your message, actually having 6 or more links back to your donation page is the best way to get people to actually donate in an email. So that's something I just learned. So I wanted to make sure I share that all with you so you can use that for your strategy.
Thank you so much for sharing, Carly. All right, we're off to a great start. And Matthew, I'll have you start us off with the next question. How can nonprofits create a cohesive and impactful digital strategy that aligns with our mission and resonates with a wide range of stakeholders?
Yeah, I think it's really starting off by clearly defining, understanding the goals, the mission, the organization, keeping that mission centered with everything that you do, and you really want to to resonate with stakeholders, really trying to get their input. We've seen a lot of people do have bring in donors or board members on board with their strategy, or maybe it's on a committee or something to bring them in, but it adds that belonging, it adds that piece where people feel like they're a part of the mission. Really getting that alignment. Really want donors and audiences to really align with that mission and not kind of creating that tighter community, and being where your audience is and not feeling the need to be on every platform is also, it helps kind of give that little bit stronger strategy and not going in every different place that you can.
Wonderful. Thanks, Matthew. All right, Carly, over to you. How can nonprofits develop a strategy that aligns with their mission and connects with a broad audience?
Definitely. I would just piggyback on what Matthew said, and I would really say just humanizing your mission is the most important thing that you can do to bring people in to really feel like they're resonating with your mission. And that really is for all types of stakeholders, for your board members, for your beneficiaries, for your donors, for your volunteers. There's a reason that they support you. So it's most likely due to some sort of story, some sort of connection that they have with your mission. It's most likely not because they heard this great impact number and that inspired them to get involved. That could be true, and that is a great way to show an overall impact. But when you really have great storytelling as part of your digital strategy, that's what's really going to bring people in and really going to make them stay longer. And really, that's just reminds me of, I like to ask people, what is their mission? And when you meet somebody and they tell you their mission, they probably have the talking points, they know the words, but the real question is, can you show me your mission? And when you see somebody's mission in action, that's really what's going to get people to give more. It's going to make people just more engaged in your digital strategy overall.
Thanks, Carly. All right, Andrea, same question over to you. How can nonprofits craft a strategy that aligns and resonate with broad range of stakeholders?
Yeah, so when I'm gonna take a little bit different approach with the question, because one of the things that I see with my clients, we start talking about a strategic plan, and they wanna open the document, right, and start typing. And I think it's really important for our nonprofits not to neglect the data analytics side of creating this digital strategy, right? Instead of kind of focusing in on, okay, number one, which platforms are we going to be on? Number two, what do we need to do with our website? Number three is email. All of those things, yes, are going to be part of the digital strategy. But unless you start with some good data behind the scenes, that strategy is probably not going to be as successful. So you can, have a great plan to go all in on LinkedIn, but if your audience, you don't have any data to support that your audience is on LinkedIn, then you're really wasting, very precious time. So I say start with understanding where your funding's coming from, what percentage is corporate, what percentage is grants, where are your annual fund donors coming in that equation, and how do people find you? Talk to your stakeholders that, like Matthew said, making sure you have that input from, because, you're not just talking about your donors, you're talking about your board members, you're talking about volunteers, you're talking about community partners. So getting all of that data up front and then trying to put that into a strategy is going to make a nonprofit, I think, much more successful in the end than kind of open up that blank page and creating that document.
I love that. Thanks, Andrea. All right, Jessica, what would you like to add? How can nonprofits craft a strategy that aligns and resonate with a broad range of stakeholders?
Yeah, I think everybody who's shared so far has had some really strong ideas. And the word that I kind of honed in on when I was looking at this question is cohesiveness, which I think really comes down to good organization and good record keeping. Because a good marketing plan should ensure that the right messages are getting to the right people, which is kind of what we talked about with like that tailored messaging and with segmentation. But crucially, you're also staying aware of how your audience responds. So, for example, if you are putting out a donation request email and somebody donates, they should be moved to a thank you stream, and future messaging should kind of be towards nurturing them, keeping them involved, but not hounding them for 10 more donations because that's the next step in the donation email pipeline, for example. So you kind of want to think about how all of your marketing channels, so that's going to be social media, your email, your advertising, your website, etc., are working together, and make sure you're thinking about how, if you have one individual who's probably interacting with you on multiple different platforms, what's the experience that person's having? Are they getting kind of a barrage of the same messages from every single platform, or are they getting kind of a variety of opportunities to interact?
Fantastic insight, Jessica. Very quickly, I'd like to remind our live audience to start submitting your questions at any time, and we'll get to them on the second half of this session. All right, here's our next question. And Carly, I'll have you start us off with this one. What innovative approaches can nonprofits take to build and nurture relationships with their supporters, donors, and beneficiaries through digital means?
Sure. I love this question. I have a lot of different ideas, but I'll save you all and only give a few. But the first thing that comes to my head is I love a multi-channel approach. So if you are an organization that sends out a lot of handwritten thank you cards, or you send out a lot of direct mail, make sure that that direct mail has a way for someone to go directly to your website. So maybe it has a QR code that is going to show them how to get to your website. Maybe it's just make sure that it has your link on it very big so they know where they can find you to find more information. I even did, sometimes I used to send like thank you cards that would have a QR code, and they would pull up a thank you video that they could watch on YouTube, something like that, where people can really feel like they have not just one touch, but two touches in one. So a multi-channel approach. I also just, similar to kind of this stuff I've been saying, but I also think that just a really innovative approach is just to elevate the stories of those who historically are underrepresented. A lot of times, the people who are your beneficiaries at your organization, they haven't always had the chance to share their story, and that's really what people want to hear. When you're a donor, you usually want to hear how your impact is actually showing up in real life. So elevating the stories of people who have been historically underrepresented is huge. And then just as a general rule, I always like to tell nonprofit brands, like, don't be afraid to have a personality. It's okay to be a little funny and a little silly, and to use emojis, and to use, just like more personality when you're talking to people, because that's what's going to make people remember you. That's what's going to put a smile on their face when they think about your brand.
Wonderful. Thanks, Carly. All right, Matthew, over to you. Any insights on how nonprofits can creatively use digital methods to strengthen relationships with supporters?
Yeah, and I think, definitely creating, we really like the idea of, kind of exclusive content for different segments, really taking the segment idea and really going for it, and having specific things for, whether it's behind the scenes of different aspects, or the day-to-day operations, kind of making it feel like you're bringing them in as part of the team, because in a lot of ways they are. It may be a small part, but you want to increase that relationship. And I think along with that, really having a personalized approach. So we really like personalized videos, and a lot of times it can be tough to do that. And fortunately, there's been a lot of innovation over the years that has a lot of ways that you can use software and platforms to take a video and split it off into personalization, but really trying as much as you can to make it personal. So we really like those platforms for a big, broader approach for segments. And then a lot of times when we're doing a video, we will do, if it's a top 10 major donor list, or maybe it's a capital campaign where someone's trying to get to a specific, we've done some videos where we did an intro for the mayor and the county mayor and the city mayor, just to have that way of getting in to them. It's usually some quick stuff, but you put it alongside something else, and so it adds that personal touch to it, and can start building those relationships. And you can have that longer relationship to talk about future impact, but really finding ways to creatively personalize, but without taking up all your time. Trying to utilize technology and utilize different ways to personalize as much as you can.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matthew. All right, Jessica, over to you. What are some innovative approaches to build and nurture relationships with supporters?
Yeah. So I think you do want to offer opportunities for your supporters and your donors to connect with your organization, both in kind of a general sense and then also in more personalized ways. And so different communication channels lend themselves slightly more easily to one or the other. So, for example, if you need to push out mass updates, then Twitter or X is going to be kind of an easy way to do that. Whereas something like a private Facebook group for volunteers might feel a little bit more personal, and people might be able to engage better that way. So that's sort of one general tip. But I think when it comes to innovation, I would recommend putting the emphasis on discovering kind of creative ways to highlight your organization on your existing channels, coming up with inventive narratives and inventive ways to kind of connect with people. Because I think, and Matthew touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's really tempting to try and be everywhere at once and to be on every single platform. And that's probably not necessary for most organizations. I've found that the organizations that have a handful of really strong channels where they really understand who their audience is, they really understand what they respond to, tend to have better results than organizations who don't really have that strong base and kind of spread themselves too thin because they feel like they need to be making TikToks if they don't actually really know what makes for a good TikTok or things like that. So I would recommend, doing what you know first and then kind of building from there rather than thinking I have to do an all-out blitz on every platform I can.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, Andrea, we want to hear from you as well. What are your thoughts on innovative approaches to build and nurture relationships with supporters?
Well, obviously I'm going to echo what these three have already mentioned. It's hard, guys, going being the last one, isn't it? You're like, oh man, they said all the things. But so I'll just encourage folks that could sometimes get overwhelmed with thinking that you have to go out and use all of these third-party tools and cool platforms and every new one, like kind of everyone has said. Don't forget about your own website. And of course, this is going to be from the website gal, right? There is so much personalization you can do on your own website, even if you are not super savvy, no matter which platform that you use. I have clients that use like interactive dashboards, and basically it's a devoted page maybe for their women's donor group. And it shows, a dashboard where they can see the real-time progress on projects that they're funding. They can, obviously find upcoming meeting information or some testimonials and things like that. But it feels really personal, and it's literally just a page on the website that not everybody can see. And so there are spectrums here. So don't get overwhelmed if you're on the smaller side in terms of staffing or budget or even time, and just kind of, I'm sorry about that. You use what you have. Yes.
Thanks, Andrea. All right, Jessica, here's our next question. How can nonprofits evaluate the overall impact of their online efforts on their organization's mission and goals?
Yeah. So maybe this is also kind of reflective of the space that I operate in, but I think really good data tracking and really good analytics are key here. And Google Analytics is a free service. It is available to you. There is a gold mine in there about how people are behaving on your website. And similarly, if you find that like email or a different social media platform or something is like one of your best platforms, most of them have some sort of native analytics that'll kind of tell you who's engaging with your content and how. So I would start there. And then my recommendation for nonprofits who are just diving into the world of digital communication and marketing, maybe you are kind of new to this and you've never really done any marketing analytics before, is to not get too bogged down in trying to really create like a super complex and perfectly precise user behavior map, because I think those are very sophisticated techniques that can be a little overwhelming and not leave you with a ton of insight that's going to like power your further marketing strategy when you're just starting out. I would start kind of simple. So like, what are the pieces of content on your site or on your social media, et cetera, that get the most clicks or the most views? What kinds of keywords are bringing people to your pages? So what are they searching for? What actions are they taking most often? Are they most often subscribing to your newsletter? Are they most often, submitting a contact us form? Are they following you on social, et cetera? And I think these kinds of questions are going to give you a really good starting point to experiment and innovate with your messaging. And as you grow over time, you can start to get into those more sophisticated, like, do we send someone from this content to this content to this content? You need to answer those first questions first before you can kind of move into the rest.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, Andrea, over to you. How can nonprofits evaluate the overall impact of their online efforts?
Great insights from Jessica. I'm again, as the web gal, analytics is definitely, I live and breathe in those things, and it can be done really simply. I'll add to the conversation to not forget about something as simple as like A/B testing. And for those that might be new to that idea, let's say you are going to send an email out. Maybe you send half your list, one version of the email, one testimonial, one set of pictures, and you send the other half of your list a different version of that email, and you see which one performs the best. A lot of times we are looking at the analytics as a whole, which we absolutely need to do, but we don't know if something could have worked better, right? Because we only know here's what we sent and here's how it worked, but we don't have anything to compare it to. So there are a lot of things that you can do that with your analog donation letters in the mail. You can do that with your emails. You can do that with social media posts, playing around with posting in the morning versus the afternoon. So don't be afraid to experiment, even on your website, switching out headlines, switching out photos on your homepage, maybe trying 90 days with one kind of set of information and the next 90 days with another, and doing some comparison testing there. I think you can glean a lot of insights from that, just by changing it up. And don't be afraid to bring in somebody external. Sometimes it just takes an outsider set of eyes to look at that data and help you glean like, okay, what can we learn from this? Sometimes we really are too close to it ourselves.
Thanks, Andrea. All right, Carly, over to you. How can nonprofits evaluate the overall impact of their online efforts?
Yeah, definitely. First off, shout out to Google Analytics 4. I did my certification. It's completely free to do. I highly recommend it for anybody who just hears those words and they think, I could never. Like, you can. I can do it. You can do it. The certification's great. Highly recommend. So then in terms of, other things that I would like to mention, I guess, about this question, I would say that they did, both Jessica and Andrea touched on this in terms of the data and collecting the data, but I would say it's really important to put the processes in place to collect the data and then to do it consistently, just over time. So you can see trends over time, because otherwise, like, just collecting data, or like, I think it was Jessica was alluding to, like, getting too attached to like one thing that you see, it really isn't going to show you a trend, and really trying to stick to your strategy, even if it means that you have to wait and be patient. Looking at trends over time is super important. And then I will also just say, as a general rule for your whole staff, trying to get everybody on board with your goals when it comes to online strategy, maybe why you're doing the things that you're doing, maybe why you're talking about your brand in a certain way, so they also can reflect that. And so they also understand why you're doing it, because it really is everyone's responsibility to take in the data together and work on these kinds of things together. So it's definitely just very important to make a culture around it as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Carly. All right, Matthew, what would you like to add? How can nonprofits evaluate their overall impact?
Yeah, there's been a lot of great answers. I don't have a whole lot extra to add. I think we've covered a lot of it. I do think sometimes it's as simple as just asking people, whether it's a poll or a survey, whether it's how would you like us to interact with you over digital? Where are you at, or even where have you seen us in the last little bit? Have you seen that we're on these areas? And sometimes it's just as simple as sending out a fairly simple form to kind of get that direct response from people, and then kind of evaluating and getting the data from there. But what everyone else has said has been really great too. Not a whole lot extra to add.
Thanks, Matthew. All right, this is the last of my questions before opening it up to our wonderful audience. But before I open that door, I want to sneak in my next question. And Carly, I'm going to have you start us off with this one. How can nonprofits leverage various forms of storytelling to effectively connect with audiences and create a lasting impression?
Yeah, so I mean, no surprise here, but we are a huge fan of video over here, but we also love a photo and we love a written testimonial. I think that just in general, those are all really great forms of storytelling, and in that way, I just would like to point out that really the power of those forms of storytelling is really that you're capturing the raw emotion in real time. I always like to think about how when you're watching like an award show, if you're watching the Oscars or something, they always zoom in on all the nominees so you can get everyone's reaction in real time, right? And I'm sure your nonprofit probably isn't handing out, Oscars or something along those lines, but there really is the same premise here, because if you're a nonprofit that plants trees, you're not going to dig up a tree and replant it so you can get the content later. So let's capture the video, the photo, the written testimonial in real time. Really being able to see the people doing the mission in real time is just so important. And then I will just say, in addition to that, really strategically thinking about all the touch points that you already touch your audience at and how you can integrate storytelling into that. So every email, hopefully it has a little bit of a story behind it, even if it's just your own story as the person who's sending the email. Or you can incorporate more signage at your events or more photos at your events, things like that are really just going to make sure that you're using every touch point you can to really bring all different types of storytelling to light.
I love that. Thanks, Carly. Jessica, over to you. Thoughts on how nonprofits can use storytelling to connect with audiences?
Yeah. So I think in the nonprofit world, it's really all about stories that are going to tug at the heartstrings and are going to create a really clear vision for the type of world that you are trying to build. And I think you can think of storytelling in a few different dimensions, like we've been kind of talking about this whole time. So there is the content of the story, there's the audience who will be hearing the story, and there's the medium you use to convey that story. And so you might come up with various combinations of these depending on what your organizational needs are. So, for example, if you know you are trying to reach people who are new to your organization, you might decide that ads are going to be the right medium because they kind of bring in people who don't already know about you, as compared to, say, your email list, where you're mostly talking to folks who do already know about you. Then that content that you're going to want to link to is going to be whatever your best of the best stories are that are going to inspire action and inspire connection. Those stories that are kind of making people say, I want to hear more. So, usually, if you have some sort of impact page or something like that on your site, these are kind of where those things are going to live. You might change up the details of these types of things depending on which audiences you're going to reach. If you're like, hey, we're trying to get all of our existing donors to give a little more, be a little more generous this giving season, then probably email or something a little more personalized is going to be a much better avenue for that message. So, by kind of thinking about those things in connection with each other and kind of deciding which of those levers you want to pull, you're going to be able to kind of make sure you're delivering the most impactful story possible.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, Matthew, you're up next. How can nonprofits use storytelling to connect with audiences?
Yeah, the big goal, the ultimate goal in telling your story is to build that empathy and lasting connections. And so, it's really important to have that heartstring moment in a way um, that is ethical, that is treating the recipient or the teller of that story with dignity, and really having those authentic stories. I mean, I'll give the shout out because Carly didn't, but we really love MemoryFox and just being able to have that more authentic approach, and then maybe building those into something larger. But really having that authentic approach, and knowing that the stories aren't always the full journey. It's not always there are nuances. There's humans can be complicated, and so not shying away from that, not necessarily embracing it, not um, um, over glorifying that aspect, but knowing that there is nuance, and letting your viewers be um, mature enough to view that content, to be able to see the nuance, because they are complicated too, and not having to have this complete beginning end story that's perfectly well written and well produced. I love a good well produced video, but it's really having that authentic approach, and telling the story as it is, and letting that speak to itself, and really showing that impact of where people have come from, as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matthew. All right, Andrea, any additional thoughts on how nonprofits can use storytelling to connect with audiences?
I'm gonna again because they did such a great job covering this. I'll use my piece just to remind you to equip people on your team to tell the stories as well. It can be exhausting as the leader, as the marketing person for your nonprofit, to be the only one who is telling the stories and creating the stories and gathering the stories. And so it's incumbent upon our directors and our leaders to equip their board members to tell stories, to give them the information maybe in a slightly different way that they can adapt to have those stories. And that way those get amplified across your audience. And they're also going to come across differently when told by the director versus being told by a board member or a staff member or another volunteer. So just, don't leave them out of that equation. And then rely on your community to give you community generated stories as well. We're always going to have great examples that we know of because we're intimately involved with our programs and services. But, don't forget to solicit that input from your stakeholders too, for them to tell you about their experience in their own words. And sometimes those stories really can just, they can go a lot further than those that we're trying to like Matthew and Carly said, maybe sometimes you're trying to tie them up with a bow and present them in this beautiful way that can and is effective. But sometimes somebody else might need to hear it just in a slightly different way or from a different person.
Thanks, Andrea. All right, we're officially opening our Q&A portion, and we'll start off with a question from Mary. Jessica, I'll have you start us off with this question. How do you go about segmenting all the constituents in your database so you're talking to the right groups about the right things?
Yeah, this is a big question. And depending on what your organization's database looks like and what your kind of existing data capturing processes are, could be a very big project. So I'm going to lead with that. And I'll kind of talk about like different levels you can do here. But generally speaking, what you're going to want to do first is sort of sit down and say, okay, what are the important sort of signifiers, markers, et cetera? Like what important I guess like ways that we could categorize people. So this could be demographics, it could be age, it could be location, it could be gender, it could be something kind of like that. It could be their relationship to your organization. So you might have donors, volunteers, board members, etc. It could be maybe if they are donors, make maybe their donation size, whether they're recurrent monthly or not. Any of these sort of different ways you could assign a label to a person. You're going to want to kind of think through what are the significant ones for your organization. And you're going to want to look through your database and say, have we captured this information for the folks in here? For things like donation size, I'm going to guess that at a lot of organizations, that's probably already being captured. For some things like demographics data, that might be a little bit harder. One thing I will mention to this end is there are services like data appending services where they will, like if you don't have someone's mailing address, for example, then go out and find that mailing address and you can purchase kind of lists of those and things like that. So that's one way that you can kind of fill in. But basically, if something is significant, you want to, as much as possible, have that information for everybody. That might also just involve calling the person and saying, hey, we'd love to connect. We want to make sure that we're up on the latest with you. Are you still at the same employer that you were at a year ago? If that's like a significant marker for you, for example. This can be also a good opportunity for your development team to catch up with major donors, for example, things like that. Once you have all that data collected in your database, most platforms, like most either like ads platforms, email platforms, etc., if you upload a list, you can start to segment those based on different tags. And so that is kind of how I would recommend doing it, is capturing whatever possible information you think you might want in your database. And then I would actually recommend kind of uploading that. Most marketing platforms will let you do that. And then segmenting it within the marketing platform rather than trying to create little lists in your CRM. I find when I do this personally, I find it gets out of date really quickly. And that is the harder way to do it. The easier way to do it is to update your segmented messaging streams within your marketing platform, but keep your database really, really up to date with whatever the latest just information on your donors is. So that is how I would tackle it. I went to try and type that in the box and I ran out of characters. So thanks for handing me that, Malou.
Very helpful, Jessica. Thank you so much. All right, anyone else want to add to that? Otherwise, we'll move on to our next question. All good? All right. Carly, I'll have you start us off with this next question. What strategies are most beneficial to extend your demographics to younger audiences? Our main demographic is older adults, and we're looking to connect with a wider, more diverse audience.
Hey, that's a great question. Yeah, if you're looking to connect, so let's see. You said your audience is older adults. You're looking to connect with younger adults. Okay. Hey, that's great. I know I've said this like a bunch of times by now, but really the short form video is going to be where it's at in terms of digital strategy. And we also know there's been a lot of, again, recent studies that are saying that Gen Z especially, they really love to learn about the mission and they care much less about the actual brand and about, the branding and all of the, the fancy stuff. They really want to know actually who you're helping and really just the nitty gritty of the mission. So being able to just have those impact stories, again, just like those real-time impact stories that you can have available for them. And then let's see. Yeah, and in terms of just the younger audiences, that's where you're going to reach them. So on Instagram, if you're posting to your reels, not just to your feed, getting on TikTok, posting your TikToks on there. And also just like a hot tip, you can just keep reusing the same ones. They don't mind. I know a lot of social media platforms, it used to be kind of taboo to like repost the same thing, but nobody minds anymore. We're reposting stuff, and that's because it's hitting different people.
Wonderful. Thanks, Carly. Anyone else want to add to that?
I'll just add real quick. I completely agree with Carly. Nobody cares about reposting content anymore. They're probably not seeing it the first time, actually. So make sure you share it over and over again. They'll eventually see it somewhere. But I would say two things to consider, depending on your definition of young, which could vary, is one, to connect with your community partners that also serve a young audience that maybe complement what you offer, and see if there are partnership opportunities there. What other people are doing, can you piggyback on volunteers that they're using? Can you show up and talk to those folks? And then use your board members to introduce you to their kids, to their other family members, friends of their kids, those kind of things. That's a perfect use case for using your current volunteer base, including your board members, to make introductions. We a lot of times limit that to like, oh, introduce me to other donor potential, colleagues, those kind of things. But, don't forget that they can introduce you to other completely new audiences as well. So it wouldn't hurt to ask them about that, if you don't have like a student group you work with or something like that.
Thanks, Andrea. Jessica?
Yeah, one other thing I was going to mention, and I think it kind of complements what both Andrea and Carly were saying, is that your younger audience's why may look different than your older audience's why. So you want to make sure that you are kind of checking in with them about this. Like an example that I can pull from a client that we work with, they're a veterans foundation. And when you ask older donors sort of why they donate, it's like they have reasons like patriotism, like it's our duty, we are supposed to do this. And those are great reasons. When they talk to younger donors, the picture's completely different. They think, it's important to support people's mental health. They are concerned about like housing access and things like that. And so both of these are very good reasons to support an organization. But if you're building a messaging that you're hoping is going to reach young people, and you're kind of beating this drum of like, it's your patriotic duty, you may just not have as much impact as you're hoping for. So I would, if you have even a handful of young people who are connected with your organization, I would ask them why. And honestly, if you get in front of a student group and you're like, hey, do you want to support us? And they're like, we're not really feeling it. Ask them why too. It can be hard to have these vulnerable conversations of like, it feels like, why don't you like me? But it's important to get that feedback, because there's a good chance that they would be engaged, but you just need to understand sort of what kind of message is going to resonate with them.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, Matthew. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, first off, I just want to say bravo for asking this question. It's a very long-term play. It's hard to justify, let's extend our audience to a group of people that don't have money and don't have influence. But it's definitely. I'm looking at the next couple generations. They're very social impact aware. They want to make a difference. And so while it's not necessarily a digital strategy, I would say volunteering. People want to be involved. They want to have their hands on something. And if that's something applicable for your organization, but just having that hands-on approach to have them be able to see the mission and be a part of it. And then over time, start to introduce other ways that they can help, whether it's in an advocating role or if there is a monetary donation role. But volunteering, I've seen, has been a big benefit for a lot of organizations we've worked with on a younger population, because they want to be involved. And so getting them involved in ways that they don't have to spend the money they don't have. They don't have to use the influence they don't have. But on the volunteering side, they want to do that. They want to do it with their friends. They want to have a group of people go. They want to have a group of people that normally goes and volunteers. So volunteering, I've seen, has been a non-digital way, but a strategy that has worked really well for organizations.
Thanks, Matthew. All right, here's our next question. How do you determine what details in your communication to change or swap out when A/B testing? Andrea, I'll have you start us off with that.
Yeah, this one should be kind of a quick one. That the real answer is you can test whatever you want, right? Anything in your message can be tested. That being said, some of the things that are easiest to start with are going to be for your emails. It's going to be your subject line. It's going to be your call to action. It's going to be even the preview text, so that little bit of text that shows up in the inbox. Sometimes play around with leaving that blank, inviting them, with a little question there. Lots of different swaps you can do there. If you're talking about social media, you can be swapping out the types of photos or videos that you're sharing, or testing a photo with a video. And I'm going to assume these guys will agree that video is going to outperform that photo, but it's great to get that data for yourself. And then even again, analog in your donation letters, you can test out asking for a specific gift amount based on the previous gift versus asking for a range of gift there, or two different stories that you have to pull from, send one to one group and one to the other. So again, you can really swap out any of your elements as long as you're tracking what you're swapping out, and you've got some mechanism on those envelopes, on those emails to know, okay, this one had this set of data, this one had this set of data. Let's look at it and give it enough time to work. A lot of people want to, make these swaps and look at it next week. You really need a good window of time to determine which of those is really working best for you.
Thanks, Andrea. Anyone else want to add to that?
Sure. I'll just say, in terms of the A/B testing for your emails, Andrea made so many great suggestions, and I would also just say you could also A/B test the length of your email. So just really just what's it look like if you have a newsletter that doesn't have a big intro at the top versus a newsletter that has like your event at the top. I don't know, something like that. You might see that it might make a big difference.
Jessica, anything you want to add as well?
I mean, to be honest, I have been dropping some ideas in the chat, and I feel like we could go on and on. Probably just like Andrea said, anything you want to test, you can. So if I think of more, I'll throw them in the chat. But I think we can totally move on.
All right, thanks, Jessica. All right, Matthew, here's a question from Jessica. How often do you recommend updating a nonprofit's professional video?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, sometimes there's, I've seen a lot of organizations have to change it because someone left, there's a reason to change it. And I do think, and Jessica, you're probably not going to love my answer. I think in some ways it's not video singular. The way that marketing and digital is going, it's a regular updating. I see a lot of people really love having the one video that hits at the gala that they can use throughout the rest of the year. But in a lot of ways, that idea that is one video that stays the test of time, it's a lot more of splitting that main video out into other videos. So it's not always just doing a new video every time. I'm not don't want to advocate for that, because that would not be cost effective. But taking a main piece of video and splitting it off. So maybe you have a couple testimonials within that video. Well, those can be their own video, and so using it in a way that you can use it over time. But as far as updating, I've seen people do. I mean, I've seen people do every year at their gala, but it's not always a brand new video that's encompassing the whole organization. It may be focusing on a different program. It may be focusing on a different facet. So would love to answer that more, but it's kind of depending on what your needs are and the way you're using it. You could say for years, if you have no staff changes and changes in mission scope or programs, or it could be kind of a always constant changing. So not sure I have a direct answer to that, but it kind of depends on the context there.
Thanks, Matthew. All right, unbelievably, the hour is gone by so quickly, so we're going to wrap up this portion of the panel so we can stick to our schedule. If you have more questions for our panelists, please Complete the survey that will be dropped in the chat to indicate which panelists you have questions for, and we'll make sure to connect you with them after the session. All right, I've had such a wonderful time hearing from our panelists today, and I'm hoping to get one final piece of insight from them all. And Jessica, I'll have you start us off with this question. What do you see as the future of digital communication for nonprofits, and how can nonprofits get ahead today?
Yeah, I'm going to do a little wrap up faux pas here and introduce a completely new topic, which is that Europol estimates that in a few years, up to 90% of the content on the internet could be written by AI. And so I think this is the time to really be thinking about what your message is, how it stands out, and how you're going to keep your content unique and compelling for your human readers in a world that may become increasingly quick. Like messages can be produced really quickly, but may become a little bit bland or a little bit monotonous as AI kind of blends everybody's voices together. So, something to think about.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, Andrea, thoughts on the future and how to get ahead today?
That's Jessica. I know that's true, and it makes me cringe. So I would say two quick things. One, invest in digital skills with your team. I know that budgets are tight. This is the area that nonprofits continually cut every year. We don't have time to send or money to send our folks for training, but I think investing in those skills now, understanding how to use AI and these other tools that are evolving, are only going to give you that edge you need as things do move really, really quickly. And then, as many people, mentioned throughout here today, diversify your digital channels. If you're just doing one thing every year, the same year, this is the time to start diversifying, trying something new. Fail fast, right? Just figure out if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, move on and try something else. But stay diversified.
Thanks, Andrea. Matthew, thoughts on the future and how to get ahead today?
Yeah, going to take slightly different approach and just kind of end with the encouragement. But I think the future is impact. It's people showing their impact. You see corporate brands all the time that are trying to use CSR and cause marketing to distinguish themselves. And in the nonprofit sector, we have that naturally. You don't have to partner with someone that's doing great work. You're out there and doing great work, and don't. I would just leave people with I would encourage them to not shy away from telling that story and getting out there, because I think a lot of times we think we're going to reuse the same content we used. We talked about that earlier. We're going to be bugging people with the third email this month, but I think a lot of that stems from the for-profit way of thinking about it, where you are trying to sell someone something, but we have the opportunity to encourage people, and people want to see our content. They want to see, they want to be a part of something bigger. They want to see the work that people are doing. They want to see good news. They want to see this, and so we have that naturally. So I think that's the future is more people, whether it is corporate brands or it's the people that are doing the work, but it's showing more of that impact, the mission side of everything.
Thanks, Matthew. All right, Carly, what do you see as the future and how to get ahead today?
Yeah, well, hey, Jessica brought it up, so I decided I'm also going to talk about it. But when it comes to AI, I actually will say, yes, I agree that we all don't want to be just like pumping out more content that isn't authentic and that doesn't have any brand voice. However, there are ways to use AI for good. And I think that we, as a nonprofit sector, we need to not be scared to implement AI in ways that will help us save time and that will help us make our jobs easier. So I really caution everybody from being scared of it, and please maybe give it a try and mess around with it and just try to see, ChatGPT, for example, just how could it help you? There definitely are ways, and I think we might need to embrace it.
Thanks, Carly. All right. And with that, we have reached the end of our panel. I want to give a big thank you to our panelists today for sharing their insights. I also want to give a big thank you to our audience. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope you enjoyed yourself and learned something that will benefit the work that you do on a daily basis. We have a packed few months of panels ahead of us, and I hope that you will join us for them. So keep an eye out on the NXUnite website or on our LinkedIn page to make sure that you don't miss out on any of these. And finally, I'd like to thank our sponsor for today's panel, Getting Attention. Thank you so much for your support on this free educational content. All right, that is it for me. Once again, thank you all for joining us and have a nice rest of your day. Bye, everyone.